What's up, everyone? My name is Emily Hayden, and you're listening to the Evolve with Emily show. Thank you guys so much for choosing to spend your time with me today. I have a repeat guest on today's show. It is Justin Lovato. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Honestly, everyone loved our last show so much that I was like, man, I got to get him back in here now that we're doing like the studio show.
Yeah.
So thank you for spending time with me on a Friday night.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's a pretty cool studio. I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
I like it.
So we were just talking before we started about how you've been learning a lot recently, and you've been on this kind of like exponential path of growth. What's something that stands out to you that is, do you have like one of the biggest lessons that you've learned recently for yourself?
Yeah, it's definitely stillness. It's been like a broken record for me, and especially in my social media. I've been preaching stillness, I think, for a while, but really implementing it myself religiously now, and it's made a substantial difference in absolutely everything. And when I went to Tulum, I actually realized how much I wasn't being still.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Even though it was already on your mind, you felt
it was definitely on my mind, because about a month before I went to Tulum, I was feeling a little bit anxious, especially in my downtime, and I was even telling my wife where I felt like I was missing something. And I'm an extrovert, and I'm always out helping people and serving my community. And but I was feeling like something was missing. And then I was kind of like touching up on it before I even went to Tulum. And I was like, I put it in terms of like peace. I was like missing some type of peace in my life, or nature, something where. And I had a plan to go to the ocean in the evening after I finished all my day stuff, and just sit in the ocean, like waist deep for about 20-30 minutes and observe the ocean, because I felt like that'd be the best way to find a sense of peace. I didn't use the word stillness yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know what would happen after that, but I didn't really get a chance to get into it because we took off to Tulum.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there, because we're on vacation and it's a unique environment, very spiritual environment, I was able to fall into a really nice sense of stillness there. And still, I didn't have the word stillness with it, but I could feel something changing within myself. And then I went and did a DMT ceremony, actually, while I was down there. And I've done DMT before numerous times, but this is the first time I actually did one with a shaman. And so
how was that experience?
It was cool.
Okay.
I always do it myself normally. So I was really open to the idea. I didn't have an incentive to do it, like the need to do it, but I more so wanted to do it just for the experience of doing it with a shaman, which was great. Completely different, but exactly the same. I did breath work for the first time when I was down there.
Okay.
And so that introduced me to breath work. And breath work was fantastic because I was able to really just tap into a sense of presence without the medicine that I haven't before.
There's another guest that I had on the show, Shane Vitko, and he's actually a breathwork facilitator.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and he said, so the first time that he did breathwork, he said the same kind of thing, where he was able to reach this like part of himself that he had never gotten to touch before. And he's on a sober journey, so, he's not able to achieve it with anything else. So I think it's cool that you're able to experience breathwork for the first time. What was it like going through that?
At first, they blew tobacco up my nose. I forget the name of it. Yeah, it's like this super fine powdered tobacco, and I really wasn't sure what it was all about. There's a name for it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I was all game. So they literally put it in your nose and they blow it, and it goes up into your sinuses.
You're talking like, I was thinking like they come by and like poof it.
I had no, and it was that's the most intense thing I've ever done.
Oh wow!
Is the tobacco being blown up your nose?
What did that feel like?
It was intense. It was sensational. It was burning, but like not a bad burn, and it's to open you up. And so both nostrils, the first nostril and like after the second one, which was like, oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
But like you're there, you're ready, but it was so intense. It got you going. And then we did the breath work, and the breath work was fantastic because I've never done it before, and it was the 30 breaths on a beat, and then on the last one you breathe out. And at the time, the concept of breathing out and holding your breath didn't really make sense to me. And so when they asked me to breathe out and hold my breath after I breathed it out, I wasn't thinking I would be able to hold it, but I was able to hold it for an entire minute pretty easily.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was a sense of peace after like 10 seconds too. Like at first I was like, there's no way, a minute. But after 10 seconds in, it felt incredibly peaceful, and then repeat for 30 breaths, and you blow out, and then it was a minute 10. And then same thing one more time, a minute 20, and a minute 20 could have went longer. I probably could have went 20, 30 seconds longer after breathing out.
Wow. I can't even like imagine it. That just seems so.
Yeah, opposite.
Yeah.
Well, I guess because when we breathe in, we're holding in CO2, and we have plenty of oxygen to actually hold breath.
Okay.
So we're more so just relieving the CO2 when we breathe out, and there's plenty of oxygen within our cells to hold air, and so that made sense after they explained it. And by that point, my whole body was radiating, like vibrating on like a very, very high level just from the breath work.
Wow.
Nothing psychedelic, and nothing like me leaving a body type of situation, but very, very vibrational. Like physically, it felt like my hands were shaking, my body was shaking. It was very, very intense, but very powerful. And then did the DMT after that.
Okay. And
the DMT was interesting. Like I said, I didn't have a feeling to do it, or a reason to really do it. But I wanted to experience with the shaman. So normally when I do DMT, I get full liftoff, and I visit the spirit world, and I receive downloads, and those downloads are profound for me to understand and learn. And then I usually bring them back, and I help communicate with my friends and family and clients on how to approach life differently and share perspective. So that's how I typically learn for the last 8 years on how I think.
Okay. Is
through DMT, mushrooms, and stuff like that, and receiving downloads through the medicine, and then delivering that to other people.
Would you say that it like essentially makes you aware to what you need to work on? Is that what it is?
What it does is it creates stillness. Right. So what's interesting about becoming self-aware, so I became, I guess, self-aware at the age of 29, I would say. Before then, I was pretty much on autopilot.
Gotcha. Which I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, and then they come to a point in their life where they start asking questions. So at 28 or 29 is when I first messed around with mushrooms, and then that's when I would say I became a more self-aware person and started asking all these questions. At the time, I didn't know why I was able to recognize behaviors and make changes, but it was because mushrooms and all these medicines create an incredible amount of stillness. And stillness allows you to then fall into a frequency of oneness. And when you find a frequency of oneness, you find connection to everything around you, and connection equals love, and love is God. So I didn't tie that all in together for a long time, for even the last 7 years of using the medicine and the way I was using it. I never tied it to God, believe it or not, until recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, till like not even like 4 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what made that connection for you?
I don't know. It was funny. I wasn't even on the medicine or meditating when I had that realization. I was just talking to my wife and like connecting the dots as I was talking. And then I was like, I think I believe in God. It was so funny.
No way.
Yeah.
Like you just realized all of a sudden.
It all of a sudden. I was having a conversation. I can't remember exactly how it went, but then I was just going through it, and all the dots were really connecting with the oneness and how I was processing my stillness. And I realized that, you're God, I'm God, everything's God. And what happened in that moment was an actual full ego death at the same time, because what I was not necessarily suffering from, and back to my original part, was when you start to become self-aware, it's all great things, and you make big changes and beautiful changes in your life. But at the same time, when you become self-aware, your ego kind of dies down, but then at the same time, it kind of starts to come back in, because you become a know-it-all in a sense. And it's hard to recognize this ego behavior because it's coming from a good place and it's in your blind spot. But then you don't realize that you're kind of judging
yourself or others.
Others essentially. Like, you see poor behaviors that are affecting the planet, or you see poor behaviors that are affecting people, or poor behaviors that are affecting animals. So your righteousness is driven by this ego, but it's so hard to see because it comes from a good place and it's in your blind spot.
Or it's almost like you're like, oh, they haven't done work on themselves, and that's why they're acting this way, and it kind of puts you in this like
authority. Like I'm better than them, right? And it was so hard to see for so long, and eventually it was actually wreaking havoc on me. Not in a horrible way, but it made me less present, essentially, because I was always in my head, not observing, but judging.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so this last time I did the DMT with the shaman, I went to go up and say hello to the spirits, and they immediately like stopped, and they said, you don't need to come up and get any more information. Like you have plenty of it.
Wow.
Like, and they pushed me all the way back down. I was only up for like a minute, and they pushed me all the way back down, and they're like, just be still. And that was it. It was just be still. And then I realized like that's what I've been kind of hinting at back home when I wanted to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And I was calling it peace, but really it was stillness. So then I started cracking up, and I realized what I needed to do. I was like, okay, I need to really implement this stillness. And so then I came home, and I was doing the breath work every day.
Oh, wow. So you started doing breath work as a normal part of your routine.
Yeah, I have not stopped doing it since. I do it every day, and now I also do it in my training as well. But I do it every day, and then a couple days into when I was home is when I discovered God as well through breath work every day, and then just putting all the dots together. And then I had a full ego death, which was fantastic, because once I realized that you're God, I'm God, even this person who's struggling is God, even this person who's doing bad things is God, everything is God, I could no longer judge.
Wow.
Yeah. And that changed everything, and it freed me of my thoughts.
Wow.
Completely. Yeah, and I've been still ever since.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's been profound, because now I can see things much quicker, behaviors much quicker. And the only time I like kind of maybe fall back into it's not me, it's my brain. So I was able to like, I've been using the terms third dimensional, fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional thinking a lot. So when you first start like becoming self-aware, you're moving from the third dimensional world to the fourth dimensional. Well, then like when you completely have that ego death, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that is that when you jump into the fifth dimensional way of thinking, and
like a spiritual way of thinking, is that what you're talking about?
You no longer identify with self, like your brain.
Oh, okay, yeah,
and
like you are not your thoughts.
Right, you are no longer your thoughts. You're now a aware consciousness that gets to observe its brain and then train it, because it's malleable, and as opposed to like riding along with it, on autopilot, and like sometimes not being self-aware still, like. So the judging was like the last piece of me to fully pull myself and no longer identify with my brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so now that you don't identify with your brain, is it more so just you recognize when your brain is judging?
Yes.
You're kind of observing rather than...
I observe it, and then it happens, and then I can just like you're smacking on the wrist. And there's no shame involved anymore, because I don't identify with the shame. I don't identify with messing up. And I know it's my brain and it's not me, and I just condition my brain to judge. So it's an easy like, hey, don't do that. Like if it's just the brain. So I know it's not my consciousness judging. It's the brain that's been taught to judge over this time. So, and it's already almost removed. Like it's only been like 3 weeks of like smacking the wrist down and being like, don't do that. Don't do that. And when I do it, it's not like, it's me just being like, hey, and it's almost laughable sometimes that I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again. Yeah. My brain's doing it again. And then I'm able to like really release it very quickly, especially by continually practicing the breath work and meditation every morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really, wow, that you've been on such a journey.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then I also discovered recently like heart coherence, and like,
explain that. What is that?
The energy of the heart and leading with your intuition instead of your mind. And so it's interesting when you lead with love and you remove the judging, it's far easier to be in a state where I don't know, it's just you're always in loving mode. So that's what I kind of focus on when I meditate, is being in heart coherence, which is opening up my heart to push out that frequency. And that allows me to be in this unique state of mind all the time now, and instead of, again, the judging. It makes it so I really can't fall back into old habits through my brain, is by leading with the heart coherence.
I think love is like one of the most powerful things in the world, because I think love can cover like anything, like true love. And it's not love in the sense of this fake lovey-dovey. That's not what it is. Like love can also be honesty, you know, that's hard to hear. Like love doesn't always mean that it's packaged so pretty. Like,
it's true.
You know, love means saying the right thing, even if it's hard. It also means being receptive to that on the other end of it and wanting to know the hard thing just because it's true. Like that's love to me.
Yeah.
So I think there's like so many different forms of love. And I've always said, like, I really feel like my purpose on this earth, like just to put it in a really focused, small sense of the way is to love on other people, because I do have like such an immense love in my heart, which I believe comes from God, that I feel like it's my purpose on earth to then go and love on others like the best possible way that I know how.
Fantastic.
Which is only by like doing my best to model my life like God, and to continually try to evolve into a better version that's more similar to God. Obviously I'm human, I mess up, I'm not God, it's not what I'm saying, but like my goal is to always love better, to always love deeper, to love more on my friends, my family, the world. Like I really feel like, you know, us as humans, like we're here for each other, we're here for a reason and on purpose. And like, you know, I don't know, I just think it's so interesting how like things play out, whether it's like relationships or friendships or people, and how like their paths cross at a certain time, because I really feel like we're all here to learn something different from each other.
For sure.
And you know, you're someone who our paths have crossed, you know, multiple times, and I feel like I've learned a lot from you and been able to. So you know, I'm thankful for our friendship, and for Steph too, your wife. Which
you're definitely onto something with the word evolve. You know, when you look into like certain great philosophers like Alan Watts and Eckhart Tolle, and the purpose, and they talk about purpose, and they say actually everybody has the same purpose, and it's to become enlightened. And becoming enlightened is to become one and find connection. Connection is love. Love is God.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm in a good room. Yeah. So it's cool because so evolve, right? Like it means so much to me. It's obviously becoming like a better version of yourself, or I guess you know, you could describe this so many different ways, like becoming the truest version of yourself, or becoming.
Also call it enlightened. Enlightenment is purpose.
Right.
And enlightenment through and enlightenment is evolution, like to find connection. And that's what like back to like these medicines, a lot of people don't really know how to look at these medicines in a particular way, and I like to simplify it as best as possible as creating stillness. So when you have mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, and all these other beautiful medicines, what they do is they pull you into this really still frequency, and then when you fall into that frequency, your heart coherence turns on. It aligns with your mind. And it's pretty brilliant, and that's when you find that love frequency, and that's when you feel that deep connection to the earth, and you feel like you're actually a part of Mother Earth, and you feel that deep connection to the universe and everything and everyone around you, and that is enlightenment. Right. It's pretty cool.
And I think it's also, you know, evolve, like if you go backward, like it also spells love in it, which I think is really cool. So it's like evolve into love. And it's like this thing that continuously goes on forever. I think one of the biggest things that I think helps me is to always have a standpoint of not being afraid to look at like the dirty laundry, so to speak, right? So always having this standpoint of, if you're someone who I love and who I trust and who I feel like we have similar, you know, core values or whatever, and essentially what I'm saying is like someone who I take your feedback or your constructive criticism as like genuine feedback for myself. I'm not afraid to come to you and say, hey, what is it? Like if it's something that I'm unaware to. This is something I was talking about with some friends earlier this morning was, you know, how can you tell that someone is continuously growing in their life or like living in their purpose? And it's that they should always be going into the next level of themselves. So like I always consider you as like one of my very like evolved friends, right? But
Thank
like you will have never fully evolved. I think you're always continuing to evolve. And so I think it's cool when I already consider you that. And then I see you today and you're like, man, I've been growing and learning so much. I'm like, yes.
One of my friends called me a transformer.
Oh, I love it.
Like, yeah, she's like, you're a transformer. And I'm like, that's such a funny way of putting it, but I like it. Yeah. She calls me because I'm always changing.
Yeah.
It's been really, really fun. And it's been incredibly clear. Yeah, it's been dope. And you really can feel the energy all around you when you tap into those frequencies. It's profound, and it's through stillness. And I put up a post recently, and a lot of people always say they can't sit still.
Yeah.
That's one of the toughest things. And it's really, important to make them understand why they can't. And it's because of anxiousness, right? And there's an actual system that's in play that provides this world, and it makes everybody very anxious. And then the same system then also provides endless amounts of stimulation for you to cope with your anxiousness.
Right.
And so it's like this circle that we all get caught up in, this prison essentially. And then nobody teaches stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times if we get anxious, we'll eat.
Yeah.
When we get anxious, we'll go do drugs. Or if we're
Yeah.
anxious, we'll put it into our work.
Mm.
And, there's like maybe 7, 8 major stimulations that people, when we're anxious, when we can't sit still, we kind of dive into, and it distracts us from actually dealing with the anxiety, the fear, or the insecurities. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I wanted to ask, what should we do when we feel that anxiousness? Like, what's a better thing than...
Sit still.
And do what with it?
Exactly. So the hard part is sitting still seems impossible, because even if you sit still and say close your eyes to meditate,
right,
we're in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was. So the best thing to do is go into nature and observe.
I love that.
Right.
That like even just feels so nice.
Good.
Yeah.
So that's an easy one.
Okay.
And there's other ones that are really cool that you always hear about. One, breath work,
mm-hmm.
because breath work makes you focus on your breath.
Mm.
So it takes you out of your mind, and you have to focus on your breath. And through the breath, you can create stillness. So it's another form. That's why breath work is so popular, because it makes people very, very still and very, very present. Just being in nature, going for a walk and observing and not judging,
mm-hmm.
just observing is fantastic in nature. And also the things like the cold showers and the cold plunges are hyper-focused because of how cold it is, and you have to focus on your breath again.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's little tricks. And then there's like active stillness too, like yoga,
mm-hmm.
right? And like rock climbing.
Oh, I never thought about it.
Right, because you have to really focus on where your hands are and all. Like, so anything that requires hyper focus, but I prefer like real stillness. But there's even like walking meditation.
Okay, so there's kind of like there's baby steps you can take if you're not really ready.
Nature one's the best one for people who have really issues, like being in their mind, and like it just runs and runs.
Sitting here like, do I have lots of issues? Because I love.
That's me, and and it stopped me from seeing things around me, and it also stopped me from getting to the next dimension. Because most of the things we're in our head about are about things in the third dimension,
mm-hmm.
about things we truly don't care about, the things we're insecure about, that we're anxious about, that we're told to care about. And then we start to, become aware and like remove those things. Like, I really don't care about this, and I really don't care about that. So then that becomes fourth dimensional thinking. And then eventually the fifth dimensional thing is where you don't even, you're not even identifying with self.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's these steps. So a lot of times this third dimensional world, we're kept in that loop by the anxious and then the stimulation. And then the
mm-hmm.
stimulation causes more anxiousness. And so we become trapped in this third dimensional loop. And then we won't ever step outside of it until you have stillness. And that's why most people, when they go through the medicine, they create stillness for the very first time.
Yeah. And
they step into this realm of fourth dimension, and they go, oh, I really don't care about these things that I've been caring about. Right. See, but they could never see it before because they were in the chaos. They're in the chaos loop.
True.
So then they take the medicine, or they do the breath work,
mm-hmm.
or they get to yoga, and they find the stillness, and then they see the behaviors they don't actually care about,
mm-hmm.
and they can remove them. And then the next step is the fifth dimension, where you have like full ego death, and then you like don't even identify with self. It's really amazing.
Yeah. So when you're living life that way, and you're not living for your selfish like impulses anymore, how do you what's the switch? Like, what are you living for? Or like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's to become more and more enlightened, to lead by example, to bring people to that realm.
Cool.
Yeah. That's what it becomes. And you can use whatever tools you have. For me, I've always used training and nutrition and,
mm-hmm.
and my behavioral coaching. So like I've now implemented breath work with all of my clients when it comes to training. So they come over the house, we do intense breath work between every single exercise.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So it's a full meditation with exercise, and then I do a full seated meditation, either to a meditation song or prayer,
mm-hmm.
or breath work.
Wow.
And so my clients are changing immensely. They're glowing when they leave. It's amazing to watch. They're just leveling up tremendously. They're catching things that they never even saw before. They're making huge career changes, making life changes. I have one of my friends who's like literally like getting rid of the alcohol in his house now.
Wow.
One of my clients, and my other clients, like questioning his whole career that he's been in for 20 years because he noticed it brings him anxiousness.
Because he finally sat still and recognized it. Wow.
And I creating all this stillness for him, so then he has these thoughts finally. They make sense. And, you know, and then we teach them how to implement that into their everyday life. Like, you know, it's small things too. Like, you know, when you have your coffee, really taste your coffee instead of being on your phone. And when you go to the bathroom, really feel yourself go to the bathroom instead of being on your phone. And so, and so like the little things like the cold shower and then the breath work and then the way I'm training now, I'm creating such high levels of stillness every day that I'm training my brain to only exist in the presence. And after a bit of time, I will be automatically living in the presence because the brain is malleable. And so we can train it to be in a chaotic state or we can train it to be in a stillness state. And after just a little bit of work and just like slapping it down when it wants to be a pain in the ass, you can completely change the neurological pathways in your brain and be a present human being, childlike form with brand new core values and brand new purpose.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Yeah. That's so exciting to me because obviously I love like personal growth and development, and to be able to lead the way by first experiencing it yourself and then to be able to share that with your clients and your social media, because I've seen it on your social media as well, especially recently. Like I didn't actually know about all of this when I asked you to come on again.
I know, right?
I just noticed on your social and I was like, I think it's time to have him on again.
Oh yeah, you could feel it, right?
Yeah, I could feel it. I was like, there's something that needs to come out of this.
There's a shift happening everywhere. I feel it's funny. I was so limited when I was in this sense of judging in every way possible, because when you feel like you know more, you miss so many things that are there for you to learn from. Like it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. And these things are there for a reason, but if you're too distracted, you'll just keep missing them.
And you'll probably keep repeating them too, right?
Yeah,
until you finally get it.
Yeah, if you get it, if you finally sit still enough to see it. And it's been remarkable. It's comical, like what you discover. You start laughing about the coincidences that are happening 20 times a day.
Yeah.
Like 20 times a day. And then there's beautiful books that you can even get into even more that we're far more superhuman than you could possibly imagine with our brain and what we're capable of doing. And that's the next realm I'm trying to get into
cool.
now.
You know about Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah,
good.
He's the genius.
Yeah, okay.
I'm actually reading his book, The Way to Supernatural. Is it Superhuman?
I think
one of the two. It's
one of the two, yeah.
Super heavy.
Now I don't know.
Yeah, I know, right? He's fantastic. And I'm just kind of getting into his book. But this is what I was discovering. This is so funny. It's like back to those coincidences. I watched this random video on Instagram about heart coherence.
Okay.
And I never heard of it before, but I found the video really neat. And it was long, an 8-9 minute video. And my old self would have never made it through.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you were like too busy. Yeah.
And I would have probably also, my ego would have been involved where I don't need to know this. I know plenty. So I'm now like watching these videos. I'm talking to people I don't think that would have been in my circle before. I'm following different things I would have never followed before, because ego's not involved. I'm not judging people based on the way they look or talk, where my brain was doing it, but I wasn't. Right?
That's a big difference.
It's a big difference. My consciousness wasn't judging it, but my old brain that I was on autopilot still a lot of the time of the day was doing it just from growing up.
Yeah.
And so I was missing a lot of fantastic people that I could have learned from. And so I watched this video on heart coherence, and I was like, wow, and it's all science-based. And the energy that comes from the heart. So the first time I ever heard anything about it. And then I saw another person talking about it. I just started following about heart coherence, and it's brilliant, right? And so then I wake up one morning, and I'm very still. I'm like super still, and I'm not a reader normally, and I could never really get into reading because I was never still. And I used to just label myself as a person who was bad at reading comprehending because my teachers told me that, everybody told me that, but really I just never learned stillness.
Wow.
So since I've been practicing the breath work, I all of a sudden had this thought. I'm like, I'm going to try reading, because I really never read before. I just would listen to audiobooks or blankets or whatnot. And so I was like, you know what? Steph has this wonderful collection of all these different types of books, and she does so much reading. So I'm like, I'm going to go read. And I go into our office, and for some reason, I go, you know what? She has these 3 books by the bed first. Let me just go check it out. And it was Joe's book. Oh, okay. And it was a way to be supernatural or something like that. We should definitely get that title down.
Yeah, we'll get the title and put it in the description.
so I like pick it up, and it's like, I mean, even the books like kind of cracked me up, because I'm not joking. I'm like, for some reason, I started feeling like more supernatural, like as I was meditating the last couple weeks. And this sounds really hilarious, but I was like in my shower, and I'm like pushing my hands against the wall, and I'm like, imagine if I can just like push through this wall.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
And like literally this first the introduction is him talking about this monk who was able to place his hands on the wall and then push his imprint into the wall. And
no way.
Yeah. And then the whole first part of the book is about heart coherence. So there's, again, these coincidences. I was literally pushing my hands into the wall like a week before.
That's hilarious.
And I literally started cracking up. But I was doing it wrong. I was trying to use power.
Totally.
And
ego, kind of.
Exactly. Like, I'm strong enough to maybe push like superhuman, super strength. But really, the monk was the wall. He molded into the wall, so it was much different.
Yeah.
And so I haven't pushed through the wall yet, but
but I'm trying.
But what I've done is like I did the cold showers, and for focus and stillness. But instead of like, I first started leaning into the cold showers, which made it really nice. The water actually turns pretty warm after you lean into it and accept it. But then once you become the water, just like he became the wall, that was like a whole different game as well. Like, I became the water. We weren't separate. And then it was warm. It was warm, and I could literally bathe in the cold shower for however long I wanted to. Ice cold shower.
Like, you adapted.
I became the water.
You became.
Yeah, I didn't have to no longer accept it. Right? There was accepting it at first and leaning into it, and that worked really great. Like, fantastic. But then I was the water. And that was like another jump.
Okay.
And that was pretty powerful. And I got that from his book, where the monk wasn't pushing the wall because he was stronger than the wall. He was the wall. So he just molded into it, just like I was molding into the water. So I started implying a lot of these things. And he had this really great story about how he was meditating, and, you know, he was talking about all these supernatural capabilities. And I actually had one this morning when
really?
It's going to sound crazy. So,
Tell us.
I know, right?
He's like,
So I wasn't meditating on being any like unique way or I mean, supernatural in any way whatsoever. I was just meditating, and I read in his book a couple days ago, and I don't know why it popped in my head, is how he meditated on his pineal gland, the third eye, and what it looked like. And for some reason, when I was in my meditation, I was closing my eyes, and I fell into this unique trance where it felt like I was like, you know, when you go for a really, really long run to where your body like hones in, and you like your eyes almost go down, and like you're just like in it.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that, but like really like a little bit more enhanced, or really more enhanced than that, right? So I found myself like laying back, and my eyes were closed, and there was these flares that started coming in from the side of my face, like sun flares. And this is like 4 a.m. So like sun flares were coming in. I'm like, are my fucking eyes open?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really closed my eyes just to like really like almost like to close them to make sure there's no sun flares, and there's still sun flares. And then for some whatever reason, I start seeing like the eye with the triangle, you know, the one on the dollar bill.
Yeah.
So I first see that, and then I see just an eye, like a goopy like eye that's like opening up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and like trying to like clear itself. You know, it has no hands. It's just an eye, so it's like opening and closing, and like trying to like, you know, be able to see clear.
Wow.
And this is this vision I have while these flares are coming in. And it was really, really unique, right? So then I finished meditating, and I sit up. And I'm perfectly like normal, and I'm sit up, and I have two stools in front of me, and these stools have circular legs that go all the way around at the bottom on the carpet. And I look down, and I close my eyes, and I close my eyes for a second, and the rings which are the legs of the stools, when I closed my eyes, they were there, but they were like fire. So it was really weird, and they were exactly in they were. I wasn't like imagining it. So I like closed my eyes again, and the stools were exactly where they are, and I closed my eyes, and I could see the legs of the stools, and they were like bright, like almost like this, like the color of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's so strange. I'm like, I'm not tripping or anything.
Yeah.
And so I close my eyes again, and they're there, clear as day. And I open my eyes, close my eyes again. I do this like 30 times. And I'm like, how can I see through my eyes when I'm closing them? And then I take my hands,
Mm-hmm.
and I close my eyes, and I can see a vague outline of my hands in front of me with my eyes closed, very, very faint. And I turn my hands and I wave my fingers, and I could see my fingers moving, very, very faint. And I'm like, okay. And then, but the legs of the chair were very profound. The rings, the legs were just very profound. I'm just like, well, now let's, and then I go to look at my hands again, but then I couldn't see my hands anymore. But I could see the legs now. So then I take the hand I can't see anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I close my eyes, I'm looking at the legs, and I put my hand in front of the leg, and I can't, and it literally like just goes in front of it, and I can't see through my hand. And then I pull the hand away, and I could see the legs. And I was doing this back and forth.
With your eyes closed.
With my eyes closed, and I could see the legs. And then if I put my hand in the way, and then my hand covered up the legs like you would normally if your eyes were open.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that happened this morning.
What do you think? What was that?
I was able to see the chair's legs with my eyes closed. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah. So I'm like, explain. Please explain.
That's pretty much it. And so
is this something that like you said was in the book?
Yeah, like they talk about how you can pretty much fix everything. You can fix your eyes with your brain if you will it to happen. You can fix cancer, you can fix injuries, you can, they talk about telepathy, they talk about being able to, read minds, they talk about all these type of things that are very, very possible through the mind, and we just can't tap into these things just simply because we're not on those frequencies.
Right.
So it was very interesting to me. Like, I wasn't planning on trying to see anything without having my eyes open. It was just something that happened after I, for some reason, like had this vision of my pineal gland opening up. And I was in there for a while, and it opened up, and then I closed my eyes, and I can see the legs of the chairs when my eyes were closed. And even at one point, I could see my hands, just vaguely, just a little bit. And it was really, really unique. And a part of me wasn't surprised. I was so like still.
Wow.
Later on,
you would think that you'd be like, what?
Yeah, later on, it kind of geeked me up a little bit more when I was thinking about it. I still haven't told Steph about this. I was like,
shut up.
Well, no, I texted her. I'm like, hey, let me know when you're up. I want to tell you something. And then like time went by, and I had a couple clients. She's like, hey, okay, I'm available. I'm like, oh, I'll just tell you later, like, because it's really strange, but it has me very, very interested.
Very curious.
Very curious on many levels. And it just, again, like, it just so happens that, like, I'm reading these things, and they're coming to light. And then even, it's really profound how this works, too. Like, one time the other day, I had, like, just a lot of anxious dreams. And I woke up, and I was actually, like, kind of like pissed off from the anxious dreams. When you like go for the ride with your dreams, and you wake up and you're just like, oh, that dream put me in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And it's just a dream, but it rose so much out of you, you're like kind of fucking pissed off.
Yeah.
And so I had that, and I knew it. And it just shows you, like, even when you're a self-aware person, like, even when your brain is pissed, like, you get pulled in, and you're like, it's just like you fall victim to it. And I was really anxious. So I was like, all right, well, let's sit down and do breath work. And I'm doing the breath work, and I do the whole breath work session. And I still felt the anxiousness, like, right in my chest. And then all of a sudden I had this mantra thought where I was like, I am love and I do not judge. I am love and I do not judge. And I started repeating it. And then, like, my voice started, like, echoing, like, within myself. And my chest, like, opened up, and literally, like, anxiousness was just, like, coming and falling off me the more and more I said it. And then eventually I was completely full of love, and I was no longer judging myself or whatever was in my dream or whatever it was. And I was able to release it through that mantra. So there's a lot of unique things that are happening.
I think words are so powerful. And
vibrations.
Yeah,
especially
they are.
When you say them out loud.
Exactly. I remember one time it was like middle of the night for some reason, and I looked up Tony Robbins on YouTube because I remember that someone had sent me a video to him about something about how powerful words were, and if you get in a really tight or anxious spot. And the reason why I went to his video was because I literally was just laying there, and then all of a sudden my heart was like a million miles a minute, like straight up out of nowhere. It wasn't even like stressing. It wasn't anything like that. It just like happened, and I just felt myself. And it was one time that I was actually like really scared because I didn't know what was happening, and it had never happened to me like that before. Normally I'm stressing, I'm building up that anxiety.
Yeah, something caused it.
Yeah. This was like kind of out of nowhere, or it felt like it was. And so it's funny because in this video where he talks about being anxious, he says his advice basically was like to stand up, get in like a superhero position, right? So like chest out, hand on your hips, you know, and you say your like affirmations to yourself,
your mantra, yeah.
or your mantra to yourself. And so literally I didn't know what to do. I was freaking out. I thought I was going to like have a full blown, you know, anxiety attack or panic attack, and no one was there to help me. So I was like, I didn't care. It was like middle of the night. I'm doing this in my bedroom.
Yeah.
You feel a little stupid when you're doing it, but you know, I was in a really tight spot. So I did it, and I don't remember in the moment what I said. It was whatever I knew that I needed to hear. And I just, even though I didn't fully believe it yet because I was freaking out, I like did it. I assumed the position, my heart out, chest open, just open to receiving, and like said those things out loud. And I think it was something like similar to what you said, something about like, I am love and I am okay and whatever, just like reaffirming these things to myself. And it's crazy because I literally went from like my heart rate was probably like 175 or more to like fully calming down, and I was like, whoa, what just happened here?
Then you also probably felt amazing.
Yeah, literally. And I felt like it just felt like such a really cool power. And so like I've always known that like words are powerful. Words can literally, like, you can speak like life or death into people, into situations, into your own mind and heart. And so in that moment I was actually able to feel the tangible results of that, similarly to you.
Yeah, those frequencies are powerful, and Joe Dispenza talks about that, where like the science is all there. That's that heart coherence that you're tapping into, which is the love, right? And there's other frequencies, other people out there on those frequencies that are there sharing that love with you, which can help us find that and then bring us back to it, which is amazing. It's really powerful stuff, and I think we can all tap into it once we remove ourselves from the third dimensional world in a way. And it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I know. I'm always so interested. That's why, like, when I hear stories like this, I'm like, oh, tell me more, you know, because
it literally blew my mind.
Yeah, that it's actually crazy what's possible. And I think none of us even like have any idea of what's actually possible.
Yeah. You know, the other day I was like, man, how are these monks like 5,000 years before Jesus so smart? I was always trying to think, like, how are these guys so smart, so long back then? And it's because they were still.
They didn't have social media to scroll on.
They were just walking around getting smart and being still and
walking around getting smart.
Yeah, and like just being in the now and very, very present. And through that they found oneness, and oneness is connection, and connection is love, and love is God. And they were able to get these downloads, like these spiritual downloads that I refer to as this high frequency. And they're there for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you're too distracted, you won't be able to tap into them.
And it's hard because I feel like society, like, we've built such a world of distraction.
Yeah, that's the three-dimensional world.
So many distractions all the time. Like, I find myself involved in it, you know, whether it's like social media or, you know, sitting here thinking about the next appointment or all the stimulation that, you know, we talked a lot about stimulation in the last episode that we did. But it's something that is like constantly on my mind of like, how can I decrease this? Because even for myself, like, you know, I've been traveling nonstop. I've been working nonstop. And it's like, as we're sitting here talking and I'm hearing about your beautiful journey, I'm like, I need to create stillness. Well,
vacation to a place that supplies that. That's what I do. I don't vacation to anywhere that's more stimulation.
Right. No kidding.
When I vacation to places like Tulum or Bali or Thailand, where the community, also what's important is the community. It's kind of like a monkey see, monkey do. If you vacation to a really dope city, great. But everybody's overstimulated there. And remember, so since their heart coherence isn't there, you're not going to be able to fall into that frequency. It's really, the community is very, very powerful when it comes to tapping into these frequencies. You know, that's why like meditating in large numbers can like change the world.
Oh,
you know, and breath work in large numbers, and we all get on the same heart coherence, can like really do things and like completely change the world. And like even tomorrow, I think it's Tony Robbins I don't know if he's hosting it, but he might be on it. if you want, you can totally jump in.
What is it?
At 12:12 tomorrow, I'll send you the information.
Okay.
One of my friends, he's hosting it is like hundreds of people doing breath work at the same time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, please send me the
I'll
information.
send you all the
Do you
information,
get
yeah.
a ticket, or is it something anyone can do?
Anybody can do. It's via Zoom, and we
Okay.
all do it. Yeah, it's all done at once, and it doesn't matter that it's via Zoom. At first, I used to be like, what's the point of doing it on Zoom? Like, you need to be in person. Like, none of that matters. If you're all tapped in, the magnetic wave that comes off of your heart travels across the planet, travels across the universe.
Wow, I really want to do this.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. I've never done breath work with anybody outside of when I was doing it with Steph, and that's and the shaman, and that was the most powerful time was when we did that. And I didn't understand heart coherence at the time, but there was 3 or 4 of us that were doing breath work at the same time, and that was the most vibration I've ever done.
Wow, because you could like feel theirs as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm even more excited to do it now because now I'm aware of how powerful that is in numbers. So like even Steph, I'm excited to do breath work tomorrow with Steph in the morning.
Oh, cool.
Because I want to be able to do like really tap into our heart coherence together and meditate together. Meditating together is really powerful. And I used to think like that was silly. I thought meditation was like a personal thing. And it's not. It's a very like universal thing where people can do it together and do breath work together, and it's profound. And yeah, and you fall into that stillness frequency, and then you like tap into stuff like the superhuman stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel, I don't know if you see my Instagram stories, but I've been posting all these like nature photos, from everywhere. And it's like, I can literally just look at a photo or look at a video of nature, and I feel like my heart is like electrifying myself like towards that. And so I know that I have to create that in my schedule. And honestly, I just haven't scheduled anything for myself like that. It's just been work.
So this is where I was. Like when I was telling Steph, 6 weeks ago, I'm like, something's missing. Because, it's funny. It's like, because we live in this third dimensional world, right? You're a successful person on paper in this third dimensional world. And I'm a successful person on paper in this third dimensional world. So we feel like we're doing what we need to do. And so we've reached this so-called top of the ladder in a lot of ways, and success, quote unquote success. But that's a box that we're living in that we don't look outside of. And it's so different when you start stepping outside of that box and looking into different realities on what is success, what is love, all these things.
Yeah.
And so this idea of this grind or this hustle is not necessarily the right path.
Yeah, it might not be all that it's cracked up to be.
No,
or you may
it's
realize
just conditioning to be.
It is. And you may realize like what you just said, like what is success? You may have to like really look at that and see like what does that really mean for you? Because for myself, I know one thing that was really highlighted to me this year was that I can achieve every single goal that I set out to achieve. I can achieve every single title or award or whatever it is. But if I do that and I don't have people that I love around me, like none of it matters to me.
Yeah.
I used to think that like this was, achieving this or, achieving this ultimate goal was like part of my ultimate purpose. And like, maybe it is, but like, I actually don't care about it enough if I don't have the people that I love along the way with me.
Yeah, it's important to establish your purpose, right? And there's some really great books, and it's all these Hindu monks and Buddha monks that they all talk about the same thing, and the purpose is evolve and enlightenment. They all go back to that every single time, because through enlightenment you find connection, which you find God. All of them go back to it. All the great philosophers. It's really, really amazing. What was I going to say? And then I totally just lost what I was
basically just talking about success and how like I realized that none of that stuff matters to me.
So yeah, you have your purpose, and then what's next is you establish your core values. And my number one core value list is community.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
number one.
Yeah, and I know that because you even have Community Builder on your Instagram, which I love, because when I think of you, that's exactly what I think of. Like, you build community. It's funny. So my top 3, number 1 is love, number 2 is service, and number 3 is community.
Fantastic.
Because I believe I'm here to love like on others. I believe that I'm here to be of service to people, and to create community,
Fantastic.
Whether it be like online or in person or whatever. Like, I just feel that it's funny. I'm a middle kid. And so I feel like I was always, friends with everyone. I always am. Like, I'm always able to get along with different groups of people, and I'm usually the glue, like, between certain friends. Like, maybe they wouldn't really be friends, but usually with me, I'm kind of like the centerpiece of like, here you go, let me connect you guys.
That's great. Those are great people. I'm one of those people as well.
I know you are, yeah, because I see like the community that you've built, and it's funny because me and like our other friends will talk about you and your community, but it's cute. Like what we're a part of too.
Yeah, we're all part of it. Yeah, my buddy Misha said that. He's like, anyone Justin introduces me to, I know it's good.
Yeah.
He says that all the time. Yeah. And he even said, he's like, I'd be good to be a billionaire because I would just like build a community.
100%.
Yeah. I was like, that's actually a really nice thing to say. He's like, yeah, if Justin was he wouldn't have the billions for long because he'd give it all away. And I started, I'm like, that's actually very true too.
I know that too.
Right,
about you.
Exactly. So
you'd be like, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just giving. But those are all fantastic core values. And I always encourage people to try to establish a purpose in their life, and look really into like what purpose is, and then establish your core values, because then you kind of know who you really are, and then you can start making your decisions based on your purpose and your core values.
Yeah,
and that's really powerful. It makes it a lot easier.
It does, because instead of thinking like, oh, should I take this business deal? Should I move here? Should I, do this thing? It's like, well, does this decision support who I am at my core?
Exactly.
And then if it does, then you know that you're in alignment. Yeah. Even like, when I was thinking about my big move, I recently announced that I'm moving from California. Thank you.
I'm excited for you.
To Texas. Yeah. I, when I went home this time, I was able to spend all of those like little in between moments with my family.
It looked beautiful. I was happy for you. You look like you're having a blast.
My heart was like elated, and I was just like, this is everything.
Fantastic.
And all my nieces and nephews, like, to just see, like, they're just like their little giggles and their laughter and like all these little moments that I never got when I was just visiting for 2 or 3 days. It really showed me. I was like, man,
gave you that perspective on what you like. And
what
your
I needed
values.
that. Yeah. So when I was moving, it like wasn't even a huge decision. Like before, it was a huge decision of, okay, where am I going to move? Will it be Texas, Florida, St. Louis by first form? And I was intellectually trying to conceptualize where I should go, what I should do, what would be the best for me. And instead, I stepped out of my head and into experience of, let me just go there. And so I go there, I experience my family, and it's game over.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
I'm having the same thought process on like because, I'm thinking of kids more and more nowadays. And I definitely want to be in nature. And that's like a big component for me, wherever we wind up, and seasons, and being outside and being by creeks or like ponds or lakes or something, woods, and those are like the first thoughts that are coming into my head as far as like where I want to move. But community is always on my list, and I necessarily don't have anybody outside of where I'm at now, because my mom and my brother did follow me out here.
Oh, okay.
But raising children in LA is something I don't think I'm really down for.
Yeah.
But so I'm actually trying to figure out or try to at least visualize right now where I want to be. And before I was so opposed to even the snow, but now it's like, no, I would want that for a child to experience.
Oh.
And so it's funny how everything shifts.
It is. I feel like this year has been such a huge shift for people, and
I agree.
It's
a lot of people ascended into the fourth dimension.
They did. Yeah.
Yes.
This was like such a big year for people to wake up and like really realize like who they are.
Profound.
Yeah.
I have probably 10 friends, like no joke, in the last 2 months that have done tremendous self-work, and they didn't even know they were doing it. They just were falling into it.
Well, yeah, because this year it made people, I think, get still.
Yeah.
The whole
COVID. Yeah.
Honestly, man, I'm so thankful. This was such a like world-changing year, and yes, a lot of hard things happened as well.
But that's how good shit happens,
yes. Right? Some of the most beautiful experiences and things and realization comes from
the toughest things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of friends, even my friends who struggled with substance abuse. I have a lot of friends who are just go-getters when it comes to the grind, right? And they'll work around the clock, and they feel like that's success, right? Which we all have been a part of. And then that anxiousness that's created of trying to be successful, they put it into work. And then the days that they're not working, or the times that they're not working, they're still filled with that anxiousness, so they wind up going to substance abuse. And I have a lot of friends who, due to stillness, due to what happened, they couldn't work. So they had to figure out something to do. And they were smart enough not to like completely fall off and go into like some heavy substance abuse. So they found different outlets by accident. like running.
Oh, cool.
And running is breath work.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal to see so many people like just find these different outlets that were far more healthier than just like plunging themselves into these working environments or whatnot, and then discovering breath work through running or discovering stillness through this or that. And then they just evolved. And it's like they're at a whole different plane. Now, like they're anxious, they quit drinking completely.
Wow.
Yeah, they quit
good.
doing this.
Good to hear.
And a lot of people, I also want to share, like, I don't really smoke weed that much anymore.
You don't?
Isn't that
I didn't know that.
Just recently.
Wow.
So I was able, when I tied into like what everything is, like why people suffer, right? Which is the system makes everybody anxious based on either their insecurities, fears, or the future, right? Or not being in this system is in play to make you anxious, and then the same system supplies the stimulation. So I never knew what anxiousness was. I never thought I was an anxious person. So I, during my downtime, or during a lot of times, I would just smoke weed, you know, and I was like a very casual user of weed, and I thought it helped me in many ways, but I forgot why I started smoking weed. And I smoked weed to help me be creative at times. And then at some point I started identifying with it, and I was using it all the time, and I couldn't see that it was affecting me because I was still like successful and getting all my shit done. But I was also pouring myself into some poor behaviors, like being on my phone too much or eating too much or in my head too much. And it was due to the fact that I was smoking too much throughout the day and not using it to be creative. And yeah, it was profound. So it was funny. So I came back from Tulum and I went like 6 days without smoking weed. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to smoke weed. And my buddy Misha, actually, and I started paying attention to like things around me. And my buddy Misha goes, he's like, have you ever just taken a break from weed? I'm like, no, I don't need to. I'm like, it works well for me. Because I identified with it. I'm like, I don't need to. I'm like, look, obviously it works for me. You know what I mean? My ego's there. Obviously it works for me. But he is so smart. I respect what he says. And he mentioned it one other time. And he wasn't judging. He was just curious. He just was observing me being able to do this. And he was like, I could never do that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, so like I went like 6 days without smoking weed. And then I had like the ego death at the same time. So I was much more aware. I was really hovering outside of my brain. So then I was like, all right, I'm going to smoke a J. So I go to smoke a J and I'm sitting on the couch. And for the first time I was like, I think I'm anxious. And I'm like, is this what anxiousness is? I was like, what the fuck? And then so I'm like, now I'm just watching myself like high. And I get up and I go to the fridge and I know I'm not hungry because I'm an aware person now. And I'm like, I am not hungry, and this asshole is going to the fridge right now because
you're like watching this movie.
Yeah, and I'm like, because he's fucking anxious. And then so I let him get food, of course, because
you fed the beast.
They fed the beast because, you know, I'm like, all right, this is what you're gonna go for this ride. So then I sit back down, feeling anxious again. Watch my sorry ass reach for my phone, start randomly just scrolling, no intention to eat, no intention to go on my phone. And then I realized I'm like, oh, I don't want to be on this phone, right? I'm trying to distance myself and do it 10 times harder when I'm high, 10 times harder not to eat when I'm high. And then I'm like, oh man, all right, you're very little willpower as well.
Wow, gosh.
All right, Justin.
You're all judging yourself.
I'm like, geez, you got some work to do. And then I go into my head, and then I start analyzing things, judging things, and talking it over with Steph, and just taking over a room with my thoughts and regurgitating every single thought that I ever have. And I'm like, damn, it's like, so now you're filling this anxiousness with your thoughts and speech in a room, and because you cannot sit still. So I realized that I was using weed way too often, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Weed's never the bad thing. It's like your behaviors on it. If you're not aware of it, that can be bad. So I realized, like, hey man, if you're going to do anything, do it with intention.
Yeah, wow.
And that was the big lesson.
Oh my gosh, and not just out of routine.
Because it became so a part of my schedule. Like, we'd be cooking dinner. I would go over to I had a weed tray, you know what I mean? And even that whole thought, I was like, why is this even here? It's like, I don't have a weed tray anymore.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I don't have a weed tray anymore. It's like, if I want to smoke weed, I'll go to the store, I'll get a joint, and then I'll smoke weed for a specific reason, to be creative or to indulge in food because I want to, because it's a choice, as opposed to smoking it casually,
like a habit,
on autopilot, and then falling into a poor behavior because of anxiousness and doing something I actually didn't want to do.
Wow.
That was huge. I
That's
was like,
massive. I think there's a lot of people that can really relate to that.
yeah.
That are probably listening right now like, I've never looked at my weed usage. Like, because I think there's a lot of people that go through that.
Well, even just our anxiousness in general, right? So now let's just remove the weed, the reason why it was called anxious. So people just sit with anxiousness in general. How many people, and you look at the world, it's an obese world. How many people are eating because they're actually hungry?
I sometimes will anxiously eat, and I realize that I did that. But I won't eat when I'm sad. If I'm sad, I won't eat.
You know why? Well, you know what's funny? I'm surprised that we even eat when we're anxious a lot of times, because usually anxiousness will dilate us and like make it to where we're like in flight mode. But sadness, I don't eat either.
Interesting.
Never do. I clean.
Oh, me too. Because it makes you feel better.
I clean. I'm like arguing with Steph, and I'm cleaning. And I'm like, anytime I think she wants me to like clean the house, she might pick a fight.
Right.
But I clean for whatever reason. I'm like making the bed all angry.
Right.
But it was really nice to just really acknowledge what I do when I'm anxious and understand that a lot of times I'm on autopilot, choosing poor stimulation. And then obviously there's positive stimulation. A lot of times when we feel like upset, going and working out is a beautiful outlet. But it's great to also be aware of like why you're working out, instead of like going to the gym and being angry and just like going through the motions. It's always good to be aware.
Yeah.
And whatever it is you're doing, and have intent. And that's been a big shift for me as well. Just intent with everything. Intent when I eat food, intent when I smoke weed, intent when I work out, intent when I go on my phone, intent when I watch TV. So that was a profound shift, and I wasn't able to see that until I, again, practiced stillness.
I think the biggest takeaway that I'm hearing from this episode, as we kind of, wrap up here, is get still. Like, if you get still, you can actually become aware. And if you're aware, then you can be intentional with the way that you live your life.
And one more thing, like for a while, because me and you are trying to help our communities, right? And we have our own tools to deliver them. And for a while, me articulating my downloads or my learnings works really well. But it also works better if I just lead by example and teach stillness and let them figure it out for themselves.
That's huge.
That was huge. I know, right? That's huge. Like, for instance, like I can take my mom, for example, and I would like want to tell her how she can be better or how she can heal for maybe a past experience, right? And I could just tell her and tell her and tell her and tell her and talk and talk and talk. And you end up almost like, because you're telling her, you're judging her at the same time, right? Because you're analyzing her, and she can feel that. And in the end, I ended up pushing my mom away in a lot of ways. And then I realized, like, man, how much better would it be if I just led by example by being still. And then if anything, I can teach her stillness. And then through stillness, she can come across her own behaviors and go through her own journey.
Exactly. Because I think no matter what it is, there's nothing that I could ever say or ever do to convince you of something that I know for myself. But if you can facilitate an experience, then people can have their own knowing.
Hell yeah.
And once they have their own knowing, game over.
And so that's what I started doing, is like, I don't tell people what to do anymore. I'm like, hey, you want to do some breath work?
Yeah.
So it's way more
like,
dope.
hey, do you want to try this?
Yeah. And it's way different. And it's like, it's all full of love and instead of judging, and it's profound. So that's a really cool one too to keep in mind.
That's beautiful. Well, Justin, thank you so much for taking your time on a Friday night.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it. I've learned so much just in this little episode. I actually want to go back and watch it, like, as an observer.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Let me know how it goes.
I will. My future self will comment.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, tag you in it. Okay, where can people find you? Where can they hire you for behavioral coaching, or maybe come train with you or train with you online? You
can find me at youarebuilt, youarebuilt @gmail.com. My Instagram handle is Justin D. Lovato, Lovato, and you guys can just shoot me a message. I'm pretty easygoing. And you can either book behavioral coachings with me online or in person. I have a lot of people who I just go on walks with in Venice.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's even more effective when you can just like really like, again, like experience them in person. And then my training is very unique. It's like full breath work, meditation, and weights. And I don't think a lot of people are doing that.
I don't see that really anywhere.
My new slogan's like strength through stillness.
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone listening, if you guys wouldn't mind, if you found this podcast useful or entertaining or valuable in some way, make sure to share it with your friends, share it on your Instagram story, tag both myself and Justin. We would really appreciate it. And we would love to hear your takeaways.
Yes.
Without further ado, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Thank you.